today's event is really fascinating to me because it's not often that we get the chance to speak to a founder and a CEO of a brand new league. And I've known these guys for a couple of years now. I've really been impressed with not just the direction that they're going with this, but where it's heading. And I'm referencing the Professional Collegiate League, and I'm going to do a quick little intro to both these gentlemen, and then we're going to get rolling on this right away. But batting first, I'm going to go with Ricky, and Ricky is, he got a degree in sports management. That got things going back in a few years ago, we'll say, at Lake Erie College. And then he went on to pursue his JD. He decided to be a lawyer, and he went to Cleveland State University, got his degree there. But over the course of time, he realized that there was something missing that needed to be addressed. And so he formed what was back then called the Historical Basketball League. It's transformed into the Professional Collegiate League. And what he does is he oversees all kinds of things that go on over there as a CEO, obviously. He hires people. He looks at, who can be investors into the league. He scouts talent. He negotiates a lot of the agreements. I mean, it helps being a lawyer to do that. And he's also got his own law practice. He co-founded something called the Sixth City Sports and Entertainment LLC. It's a sports and entertainment consulting, marketing, and agency representation firm. He does a lot of stuff, but I'm super excited to have him on board. So come on in, Ricky. And while he's coming in, there he is, Mr. West, David West. So David played for about 26 minutes in the NBA or longer, actually 15 years. Absolutely incredible. But power forward, attended Xavier University. He happened to be, just like one of the top players in college, but then decided, what the heck, I'll play for a few years. So 15 years in the NBA, a couple times won the NBA championship with the Warriors. He's also been an all-star a couple of times, played with 4 separate teams, but I'm a big fan of how he's transitioned from playing in the NHL. That's great. You're now playing hockey. Congratulations, David. No, played in the NBA, but transitioned from his career directly into a role where he's part of this Professional Collegiate League as COO. He oversees the development of the basketball infrastructure. He's doing scouting, recruiting, player development, and he deals directly with the folks at the NBA. Welcome on board, David.
Hello.
All right, so right off the bat, I'm going to start with you, David. I guess what I want to know is, Xavier, that was obviously a while ago, but tell me a little bit about how, or if, did they prepare you at all to play in the NBA? Did they teach you how to deal with agents and endorsements and the media and all that kind of stuff? Or did they just say, here's a basketball, dribble?
Well, I mean, my college experience was a little bit different, without being too long. I got a lot out of my college experience, but the main difference I think between the early 2000s now is the fact that there were no billion-dollar TV deals, and there were no private jets for the teams, and the revenue and the economics around the game has gone through the roof since I was in school 20 years ago.
Right.
So when I was in school, it was literally basketball is what you did, but the focus, a lot of guys, the focus was making sure that you got a degree, because you're preparing for basketball, to stop at some point. But as time has worn on, things have changed in the college landscape, and it's become much more business centered and business centric than it was in the past.
That's interesting. And so when you entered the NBA, I mean, did you already have did you feel like you were prepared for the agent stuff, the endorsement stuff, and all that sort of thing, or not really?
I literally didn't deal with
yeah.
it. It wasn't the same kind of environment. So I didn't talk to my first agent until after I graduated, after I was done with my senior year in college. And
Wow.
then along with my college coach and my brother and my mom and dad, we sat down and interviewed some agents. And then, in May, I got my degree. I walked off and went into the NBA in June.
That's amazing. And and haven't looked back, right?
No,
That's great.
no.
That's fantastic. So and then shifting you to Ricky. So you you were a sports management guy, then you decided to become a lawyer. I think that was part of what led you was becoming maybe an agent and that sort of thing, right? I'm imagining, or what was the plan?
Well, there wasn't necessarily a plan at the very beginning. I was playing college baseball and was really focused on that. Tore my UCL my freshman year of college, had Tommy John surgery the first month of my sophomore year of college. And it was at that point that I started to take stock of things and actually try to figure stuff out. The legal component still wasn't on my radar. But that was when I transferred to Lake Erie, finished my degree there, and knew I wanted to do something in sports. And then an advisor of mine said, you got to go to Cleveland State. This guy there by the name of Peter Carfagna is running their sports law classes. He'd been the chief legal officer and general counsel of IMG. Do whatever you have to do to learn from him and get access to him. And that's what I did. And from there, it just kind of took off and have been in the sports space now professionally for going on 10 years.
So what made you wake up one day and say, HBL?
So, as I mentioned, I was hurt playing in college, and obviously the focus is on players like David. When people generally talk about college sports, the elite players in the revenue driven sports. But I saw in baseball, at least at the Division III and Division II level, different types of exploitation and different means by which athletes were being taken advantage of. And when I finished law school, I was introduced to this guy by the name of Andy Schwartz. He was the non-testifying economic expert representing the plaintiffs, the college athletes, against the NCAA in the O'Bannon case that was going on at the time. He played the same role with the Alston case that went before the Supreme Court last summer. And him and I wrote a legal note together analyzing the legal and economic implications of the O'Bannon case. And in the course of that, we started talking about other ways that we thought college sports could change or should change, at least in our opinion. And it was sort of out of that was birthed the HBL originally.
Right. So at what point did you say, now I'm going to call David? Or how David, how'd that happen?
Yeah, so we had been at it for Andy and I unofficially or officially had been at it for about 2.5 years when David announced his retirement. We had about 3 or 4 months before that started putting together a short list of former NBA executives and players that we thought would sort of fit into this role of working with us on the basketball infrastructure side. And David was at the top of my list, and I saw that he had announced his retirement. We happened to have, through a couple of degrees of separation, a mutual friend who then was able to get us in touch. And a couple of months later, we were getting breakfast in the Bay, and then I think it was about a month after that he was jumping on board with us right around Thanksgiving of 2018.
That's great. So David, what was it that stood out? Like I'm assuming you probably had a few opportunities to do some other things. What stood out about this?
Well, the first thing was the mission, making sure that, with the way that college sports, in particular college basketball, the economy, had bloomed around the sport itself, understanding that the players still weren't getting their fair share of the pie. It was something more of an advocacy position that I've always supported. Probably once I got into the NBA and realized how the business of basketball really worked, that's only when I realized how exploitative college basketball, college sports was once I realized what pro sports was and sports business was in general. So it was really that. It was mission alignment, right? Doing the right thing, understanding that this is a massive, massive industry, and there's a big inequity here with the players. Who a large majority of those guys come from low economic backgrounds, and so it's it's bona fide exploitation. So with that in mind, it wasn't that hard. Just had to get to know Ricky, get to know Andy, a couple of the other guys. Really good group of just solid people who are in it for the right reasons. So it made joining pretty easy.
Now, do you find that when a student athlete is playing for, let's say, UNC or UCLA or wherever they are, do you, in your opinion, are these basketball players, are they focused so much on the sport that they're not able to focus much on the academics? Do you find that they, what's your feeling on if should they be, and is that justification for wanting to pay them? What do you think about all that?
Well, I'll take. I guess I'll get to the short part. So when you go to college as a scholarship Division I athlete, you are there to play sports. You are there to win games. You are there to perform on the field or on the basketball court. That is the priority. There are players who are mature enough to understand that the college sporting space is their last stop. We've used Aaron Kraft as an example from Ohio State from a few years ago. He has one of the most popular, was selling jerseys, one of the most popular players in Ohio State history. But for all intents and purposes, everybody knew Aaron Kraft's basketball, like the height of his basketball career was going to be at Ohio State. And just looking at that, right, those guys don't get to properly benefit economically from that participation. So in essence, you have to become a pro in order to reap some of the economic benefits of basketball or of the sport that you're participating in. So that's the way I sort of see it as it relates to school and sports. And then there's another piece of it where you have guys who may want to major in finance. All those classes are after 1 o'clock. And so those are completely off limits for athletes. If you want to be, any type of economics, finance, it's just almost impossible, to truly get it. A lot of guys, engineers, players who want to pursue things have to do them after the collegiate time is up. So it's what we believe is that players should be allowed to do both. At the time when you're at the height of your athletic ability, which is, for the majority of guys, it's 18 to 22. Most guys, again, maybe like, I don't know what the numbers are exactly, but there's only 475 jobs in the NBA a year. And there are millions of guys playing basketball. So for guys not to be able to monetarily benefit from the height of their basketball while others are benefiting, is something that it's just a contradiction that we hope to solve in the college sports space.
Well, I think that it seems like a lot of these players are being robbed of that education, as you said, whether it's finance or just sort of anything, any of that liberal arts or whatever it is they want to pursue. I don't want to say they're being completely robbed of it, but they're going to school to play basketball, as you said. They're being, that's the scholarship, that's job one sort of thing, even though they're not being paid for it at college to do that.
Right.
But they're losing out on all the benefits that the non-athletes are getting from attending class, right?
And it's very difficult. And it's very difficult to be an athlete in school as it is, on top of saying there's a specific line of study or course of study that I want to pursue, and having to wait until you graduate, and do it in the off season, whether you're a pro or not. A lot of guys end up pursuing whatever they want to do academically after they're actually done playing collegiate sports.
But who the hell wants to do that? They shouldn't do that. So that's what this league is all about, right? Yeah. It's being able to balance both. So Ricky, why don't you tell me a little bit about how the league is designed to allow the basketball player to pursue their academics, but also pursue the hoops basketball.
Yeah. So addressing the issues that you and David were just going through, there was a few things that to Andy and I at the beginning and to the broader team now that we brought together was important. So first and foremost, the primary portion of our playing season is during the summer months. So from May to August is going to be the most time intensive, most travel intensive portion of the calendar year for our athletes, which means that during the fall semester and the spring semester, they can truly choose what they want to study and take advantage of that while they're actually in college. Number two, if you go to Duke, obviously you're getting your education from Duke. In the PCL, and you know, so then you've got there's a bunch of factors there in terms of, well, is Duke really do they really have the academic program that you want to pursue? Is it really the type of environment that you even want to be in as a student and as a person? Like, just ignore the sport piece for a minute. But like, all of those factors kind of get, you know, you got to breeze through them because you're just so focused on what's the right step for me as an athlete. So all of those other factors kind of get taken away. Whereas what we've tried to do is we've chosen cities up and down the East Coast that are very dense in terms of the number of educational institutions in the area, as well as the breadth of options. So, you know, some of the feedback we got from a lot of athletes, especially those that are minorities, might want to attend HBCUs, for example, historically Black colleges and universities.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know there's some ball players now that are making the decision to go to a Jackson State, but that trend just hasn't happened in basketball. And the infrastructure within basketball is pretty much set up so that trend will likely never happen. HBCUs, generally speaking, we're about to have the field of 68 announced here in like a week. Out of those 68, at most, 2 of them will be HBCUs. And those 2 HBCUs will play each other in the 4-team play-in. So they won't actually be set in the bracket. They're going to play each other, and only one of them is going to actually get in. So really, the whole system is set up so that the talent will never shift and flow to the HBCUs. Plus, there's the disparities in terms of infrastructure and alumni donations and all those things that make it difficult for smaller schools to compete with the powerhouses, the blue chip programs. But again, for us, if an athlete wants to play for our DC team and they want to attend Howard, they can do so. If they want to go to, let's take Atlanta. That's another city that we're planning to have a team in. If you want to go to Georgia Tech, you can go to Georgia Tech. If you want to go to Morehouse, you can go to Morehouse. You know, so it really just opens up the option. If you want to go to a community college, you can do that too. So it just opens up the options for them to sort of match the right academic and educational opportunities with the basketball piece.
So how do you decide, and I'll let either of you answer this, how do you decide how much to, let's say, and I know this is not yet set in stone, but you know, whether it's offering a player X amount and then what happens with their education financially?
Yeah. In terms of the amount that we would offer them, I mean, the good thing, I guess this is a good thing, I would argue it's a good thing, is the market has started to take shape. So we generally now know, previously through under the table payments, now through payments that are starting to come above the table because of NIL, but hasn't really fully come above the table. We know what the market value of a college basketball player is now. So really, it's just market driven in terms of what we're willing to offer a player. And in terms of the educational piece, it's just that, and I'll let maybe David go into this, you know, it's really laying out the full picture so that the athletes are choosing the right and best option for them.
Yeah, and what Ricky's referring to is just a practical approach to their education, particularly some of the guys who have made a decision like, I'm going to be a pro athlete, or more so that their education, for instance, we would suggest, without making it mandatory, but we would suggest intense financial literacy, where guys are really understanding money management, saving, making sure that there are people, how they pick an agent, having financial planners, making decisions based on tax implications. These are the things that have actually tripped up pro athletes, right? From not having access to this. So we would make this accessible to our guys, sort of as a core of their education. And then if there's a specific line of education that a guy wants to go into, we open them up to that as well. Ricky's an educator. We have other educators a part of our core. So I think we're going to be able to tailor these educational courses and specifics for each individual athlete. And then we just got to take into account that there's some guys who just need life skills and just need decision making, when to say yes, when to say no, how to make sure the people around you are being supportive. Those are the types of things that, as far as I'm concerned, having been through professional sports and collegiate sports, those are the types of educational pieces that are missing and that are not in place in the system that we have now.
I can't agree with you more. I mean, it's incredible to me that I see so many athletes, even ones that have played in the pros for a while, really lacking a lot of the basic stuff that they should have learned during their college years. And
Right.
I think it's fantastic that you guys are looking to teach them that. I mean, it's so important to teach, especially at that age. The human mind is still growing, and they're much more receptive to that kind of information. And even I was watching something earlier today about basic finance, and it's not just athletes; it's even the non-athletes are not learning that in college. I mean, thank God we're learning so much about philosophy or psychology or something, which is absolutely, no offense to people with that in their backgrounds, but mostly useless when we're not even learning basic finance. So I think that's great that you're doing that. So now tell me, David, I'm going to ask you this again, actually. Tell me a little bit about how you're preparing the players once they're playing for the NBA in terms of the style of play versus the NCAA.
NBA rules. I play the NBA game, court size, 3-point line, shot clock. Probably one of the hardest transitions to make is from the college game into the pro game. And they've made some adjustments to try to make that transition smoother, but it's still pretty tough because the games are diametrically just different. So we would obviously have a pro format in from top to bottom in our gameplay. The types of coaches that we want to select, we would obviously want coaches that are going to let the guys play, and ultimately not necessarily be stuck in the old ways. We gotta adjust to what these current players and how what they are, how they like to play. And then the next piece of it would be to make sure that ultimately we want to produce good people. So the ideal situation for the PCL would be, of course, we want guys to come in, hang out for a year or two, and go on and have great NBA careers. But also we want guys to come in, maximize their time with us for however long it is, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, be able to get a degree, 5th year, get a master's degree, at the same time having a successful basketball journey for 4 or 5 years, graduate and say, what, this is as far as I'm going to take the game. But this time, in our system, hopefully these guys have learned, have taken our advice. So now they're graduating with a few $100,000 bucks in the bank, and they go off into the professional world, allowing their education to sort of project them into the future. So those are, again, for us, those are ideal outcomes. But we think that having, sort of creating this professional environment, because, the professional business in college sports is there. It's just that the players are the ones that don't get to participate in it. So college is already a professional space. It's a career for coaches. It's a career for trainers. It's a career for sports psychologists now. The players deserve to be a part of that business and that economy now as well.
That's amazing. So I'm going to say, quick question then. If I've got, hang on a second, somewhere in here, I got $1 million, and I wanted to give it to you guys to be part of the PCL. Number one, would you take it? Just
well,
ask.
Yes.
Ask me for a friend.
If it was you, I wouldn't necessarily take it from just anybody, but
yeah. No, with that said, though, tell me a little bit about how you plan on fundraising and bringing the money in, and what are the hopes in terms of franchises? How many are you looking to go into, and what type of, when I say what type of money are you hoping to bring in? Tell me a little bit about, just what you said. Is it strategic investors? Is it VCs. What, tell me a little bit about that.
I'm going to try to hit on all those, but if I forget one of them along
Yeah.
my answer here, just remind me.
Yeah.
So super quick on our structure, we're a single entity, which means that all teams are owned and operated by a single entity, like the name says. This is not something that we've invented. This is something that's been commonly used by professional leagues that have been started since the 1990s. And in fact, every professional sports league that's lasted, that has started since 1990, whether you're talking about the Major League Lacrosse, National League Lacrosse, Major League Soccer, the couple of versions of the Arena Football League that didn't immediately fold, all of those were single entity structures. So if an investor comes into us, they have two options. One, they can just be a general investor into the corporation that owns and operates all of these organizations. So by investing into the PCL Corp, let's call it, you would actually own a piece of all of the revenue streams from not just the league, but from all of our teams. The second option, which is the more time-intensive option, is our investor operator model, where essentially that person steps in and is a business partner operating that particular team on the business side, not the on-court product. So it's kind of a hybrid between a single entity and a minor league baseball owner. If you're familiar with that, minor league baseball owners have no say over the product on the field. They simply run the stadium and pay the bills and do the promotions and all that stuff. So it's like that. So if someone were to invest, they would have those two options. They could either put together a group, become an investor operator, and then it's individualized to that particular team, or they could just come in as a general investor, as you would do in any other entity, and own a piece of the revenue stream from all of the teams. So that is that part, and I've already forgotten what the other.
Well, how many franchise teams are you targeting ideally?
So minimum viability would be 4, but our preference would be to launch with 8.
Okay.
And that's just at the beginning. The end goal would be to land somewhere between 16 and 24 teams. We certainly think there's the talent to get to 24 teams, but there really aren't economies of scale. As you add more sports teams, you basically double the numbers, if you go from 10 teams to 20 teams. So in terms of operational costs, we've estimated that basically per team per year, it's going to cost somewhere between $2 to $3 million to operate that team. So you can do the math based on how many teams there are, and pretty quickly come up with what the annual operational costs are. In terms of revenue, what makes this different from other sports leagues? So we've had multiple football leagues that have tried to start in the past few years and have all failed, whether it's XFL 2.0, the AAF, the American Alliance of Football. Again, you've had other leagues that the 2 versions of the Arena Football League that failed. The problem with those sports and those leagues is that ultimately your product is viewed as lesser than whatever else is out there. So when you're the American Alliance of Football, you're not as good as the NFL. And that just comes in. That's part of the problem for those leagues in terms of developing revenue. Whereas what we are trying to do is actually compete directly with and become the preeminent destination for college basketball. And the interesting element here that doesn't exist. So like if you actually tried to compete with the NFL would just start paying their players more and put you out of business. Like that's what would be the end goal, or that's what would be the result. It might take a couple years, but that's what would happen eventually, because they just have too much money, too much legacy brand value and all that. But with us, by virtue of the NCAA's own rules, the schools can't compete with us. The NCAA can't compete with us. Yes, they now have NIL, but being an employee, being directly compensated by your employer, and then also still having all of the endorsement opportunities, that can't be matched by these schools without unwinding themselves from a legal position that they established in the 1950s and have ardently defended since then.
Now, so I want to make sure that we have just a couple minutes left. I know, Dave, you got to leave in a few minutes, but I guess the most important thing is, if someone here knows some folks that might be interested in investing, I mean, what's the best way? I mean, do you want them to reach out to you guys directly? What's the best way to do this sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, they can certainly reach out to me directly. We also have an investors listserv. So you can either ricky@thepcleague.com or investors@thepcleague.com. Either way, you can connect with us at either of those emails.
Gotcha. And so David, tell me a little bit about, so when you're looking at a potential player to come in, if you start, let's say next year in 2023, what are, in your opinion, what are some of the things that, I mean, how do you, let's say I'm the dad and you say, well, Mark, I see your son is, he's a freshman in college, or he's a senior in high school. He's got an amazing 3-point shot, et cetera, et cetera. We'd love to have him part of the piece. Like, how do you convince me that my son shouldn't play at college, but he should play in the PCL?
Well, I think it's I don't think that we'll get every convince every parent. So that's the first thing. What we want to do is take advantage of the environment that we know exists now. There are kids. If you look at the top 100, for instance, we're going to recruit the top. Obviously recruiting the top 100, 150 in the U.S. A lot of those kids and their parents are all pretty early on, 9th, 10th, 11th grade, are talking about what they want to do, whether or not they want to go to college, traditional route, or take a non-traditional route. And so we would obviously target the non-traditional guys. If we're going in to sell a guy that maybe is 50-50, we see how important it is for them to be compensated, but then also we see how important it is for them to be prepared to play and be productive at the next level. And so that would come down to, the fact that we're going to have a heavy influence of retired NBA players in and around our league, whether on staffs or in management positions. The fact that we're going to introduce the players to a pro game right out of high school, so they're actually preparing, for their future as they play, and then ultimately we're going to have, the ability to give them for them to get the attention because we're going to offset when their season would be. So now they're not going to be competing with NBA eyes or other collegiate eyes. So it's really an opportunity, a unique opportunity for the students that choose to come to the PCL.
Oh, that's great. So real quick, because I think you've got to jump in a couple, but two things. One is feel free to reach out to both these gentlemen on, I think, David, you're also on LinkedIn. So if anybody here would like to say hello to you and really make some introductions and that sort of thing, that's what we're here for. Matt had a great question, and I guess, you've addressed it a little bit, but let's say someone's gone through the PCL for a year or two and they want to try to jump into the NBA. It sounds like you guys are also trying to have some programming that will really prepare them so that they're not jumping in too early. They're not sort of, ill prepared for it, right? You're trying your best to make it a well-rounded experience, it sounds like.
Yeah. I would compare it kind of in a way to, what you do as a lawyer. Like, you can't control everything your client does. So you've got to make sure that there are guardrails, you kind of, you're keeping them on the right path. And I think that's the way we view it, is we're only guaranteed, if a player signs with us, we're truly only guaranteed that they're going to stay with us for 1 year. So it's maximizing what can we do to best prepare that player for 1 year. Obviously we're not going to sign, 12 players for team 8, 96 players. We're not going to sign 96 players and they're all going to leave because the numbers don't work. As David said, there's 475 roster spots. So, you don't have to worry about that piece of it, but making sure that, again, in that onboarding process, that we're identifying with each of these players and their families what their priorities are, and then making sure that we're delivering on that.
That's amazing. So look, real fast, I want to, we're coming up on 5 o'clock. I wanted to thank you both so much for coming today. Appreciate your insight. I think that this is really incredible and exciting. And when it launches you're shooting for summer of 2023. Is that what you're thinking? Or just, okay. So obviously there's a little bit of work to do, but I think that it sounds like you guys are well on your way. Sounds like there's people that are already pretty well interested in this. So David, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being here. Ricky, I thank you too. And
Yeah, and I'm happy to stick around for a little bit too. I know David's got to jump, but I can stay on.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, guys.
All right. All the best. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Because I saw Matt had a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Oh, he had a clarification. Players coming into the PCL. So I guess not to bogart this, Mark, but just real quick to answer that then. Making sure that, number one, we are a high school, or we are a college age league. So players that are coming into our league will likely fall between the ages of 17 and 23. In terms of preventing people from joining us that we don't believe are ready, I mean, obviously, if we don't think they're ready, we're not going to sign them. Right. It's that simple. We get a lot of people asking, well, how can my son join the PCL? Well, it doesn't really work that way. Like, you don't join Duke's basketball team. Like, they recruit you and they offer you a scholarship and all those things. It'll operate in a very similar way, where we will identify players, we'll do our due diligence, we'll meet with them, we'll meet with their families, and if we think they're a good fit for us, then we would offer them a contract that would also include the scholarship component as well. So
one of my favorite people has also asked a question, anonymous. Have you guys looked at implementing an incentive program similar to what the PGA Tour has with the Players Impact Program?
I'm admittedly not familiar with this incentive program.
That makes two of us. So since you don't know it, I don't know it. Maybe anonymous can follow up with a little bit more of that. And then, so yeah, Matt was asking more about the people joining the PCL instead of going to college. They might not be ready for that level. But I think based on what you're saying, I mean, if you're looking at the players that might be playing at wherever, University of Missouri or wherever, Purdue or something, they're probably ready to play in the PCL. I mean, you're looking at pretty strong players, not,
Yeah, I mean, again, we're trying to be, with 8 teams, our league, at least to start, is kind of like a conference. So in a lot of ways, in terms of the number of players that'll be in it, the number of games played, all those things. We want to be, when people think of the best product in college basketball, we want them to think of the PCL. So yeah, we would be primarily focused on competing with Duke, Kentucky, those, Ohio State, those sorts of programs when it comes to the talent. So the talent will almost definitely be there. And in terms of the academic piece of it, what we think we're going to be able to do in terms of including the community college component to this is those at-risk students that a Duke or UNC won't even consider, because it's just going to cause issues potentially in terms of championship eligibility and all these other pieces that are involved in college sports. We'll be able to take a player like that in and hopefully build them up and put the right infrastructure around them to then thrive both on the court and off. So I think we're actually going to be able to do some things that college basketball just isn't situated to do right now, and offer athletes some opportunities that they might not otherwise get.
Well, look, let's do this. I want to jump back to the tables, because I think that there'll be a few people that want to just have a chat with you directly. So what I'm going to do is, when we go back to the tables, Ricky, I'm going to ask you to go to one of the ones that has 8 chairs there. So if there's a few people who want to jump in and join you and speak to you directly, I know that we've got a couple of basketball players here and some other folks that may want to talk to you directly. So we're going to do that. And thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.